Okay. Erev Tov, everybody. How's everybody doing today? Baruch Hashem. Good to see everyone back after a couple of weeks of a little vacation, but not really a vacation. It was just Chag Shavuot, right? We skipped a shiur of Torah for a night of Torah. So it's nevertheless it's good to be good to be back with everybody here, and we're studying Parashat Naso. Yet another year where our brothers in Eretz Israel are reading a different parasha this week. They are reading Parashat Be'alotecha. We are reading Parashat Naso. And again, I believe we'll catch up at Matot Mas'eh in a few weeks' time. Tonight, with your permission, we're still going to hover around the topic of Limud Torah, being that we're still in the days following Shavuot. You know, we're for 6-7 days we don't recite the Hanunim after Shavuot because you have a whole week to make up to bring the korban chagiga, lest you forgot it or you didn't bring it in time. So we're kind of still in the world of Shavuot. We're still in the spirit of the holiday, and it's still a good opportunity to talk about Limud Torah. First of all, I want to thank our generous sponsors for this evening. We want to thank Mrs. Mercedes Dayan, who sponsored memory of her mother, Mrs. Sarina Farash Sultan, Zichronai Brachan, as well as Mr. and Mrs. Elisha Atias, who sponsored the shiur in memory of his mother Yocheved Atias Zichronai Brachan. The words of Torah and the lessons that we learned tonight. So, a lot of different things we're gonna talk about here, and again, some beautiful ideas by Rabbi Biderman shlita. The Torah is written in very concise form. Often many halachot are derived just from one letter, sometimes even from a nekuda, sometimes even from the ta'amim. We learn halachot. So we have to wonder why the Torah elaborates so much on the donations that the Nesi'im brought. In fact, much of the parasha, the reason why the parasha is so long, the longest parasha, Parashat Naso, is because it repeats the exact same korban from each of the Nesi'im. Each Nasi brought the same offering. So why didn't the Torah just list the korbanot and the contributions once, and then state, and then all the kol Nesi'im have you. That's it. All the Nesi'im brought the exact same thing. All different answers to the question. The Ramban quotes the Midrash that Nachshon brought ka'arot kesef, a silver dish, because the gematria is 930, and that's a number of years that Adam HaRishon lived, 930, and it weighed 130 shekel, sheloshim u'mea mishkala, 130 shekel, corresponding to Adam HaRishon's age when he had his child Shet, and Shet, of course, was the ancestor of Avraham Avinu. Then you have Netanel ben Su'ad. He also brought the same items for Chanukah HaMizbeach, but for different reasons. Yisachar's tribe, where Netanel ben Su'ad was in the prince of, he was praised for Torah wisdom, of course, and Karot Kesef is a silver dish which signifies the Torah. Zebulun, which is the tribe that signifies business, there was Lechof Oniot. They conducted business and supported Yisachar. For them, the Ke'ara represented the sea. That's where the imports would come in which Zebulun earned his wealth. So, therefore, the Ramban says, according to this Midrash, to everybody, that the Midrash lists different reasons why each Shevet had to bring their korban. That's why the Torah had to provide and show what their individual korbanot were, even though technically they were the same thing. In fact, next week's Parashat Be'alotecha, the parasha begins with the mitzvah of Aaron HaKohen lighting the menorah. The Torah tells us, "Vayas ken Ahadon," and Aaron did so. And Rashi obviously notices the obvious. What do you have to tell me that Ahadon actually followed the command? Of course, he's going to follow the command. Why do you have to tell me Vayas ken Ahadon that he fulfilled what he was supposed to do? And Rashi famously writes, "La'agid shivcho shel Aaron HaKohen shelo shina," to give us praise of Aaron that he didn't change, he didn't deviate. So on a very simple level, he did everything the same day, and he didn't, get lazy, every day, although it was something very simple, but he did it. But the word shina can actually also be interpreted to mean repeat. Shina, the shanen, is to repeat, to go over. So what maybe Rashi is saying is that the pasuk is praising Aaron HaKohen that he never repeated the same deed. Every time he lit the menorah, it was a feeling of invigoration. It was a feeling of inspiration and new intent. It was not the same that he did yesterday. It was something new. He lit the menorah in the desert for 39 years. That's what he did. And each time it was something new. There are no duplicates in Hashem's world. There's no two identical leaves. There's no two identical blades of grass. Everyone is unique in the Avodat Hashem. A person's deeds might appear to be the same, but internally they are different. And that's what Ahadon's praise was, that he never did the same act twice. It was always with new inspirations and intentions. And maybe this is the reason why the Torah feels to repeat the same 12 sets of korbanot for the Nesiim brought during Chanukot HaMizbeach. They were not the same. On paper, they were the same. On number, they were the same, but it was not. Each tribe brought their own set of korbanot with their own reasons and inspiration. You know, you can enter a yeshiva. You can go right now to a kollel. You can go enter a yeshiva, any yeshiva in the world, and everyone's learning the same page of the Gemara. Whatever the yeshiva is learning that semester, that zman, that's what the same page. So you think to yourself, there's no innovation. You know, the yeshiva world, they run a cycle of 7 or 9 masechtas throughout. That's their cycle. So you think to yourself, there's no innovation. What's new over here? Everyone's doing the same thing, but it isn't so, because everyone understands that page of Gemara differently. The same way how there's thousands of Jews learning Daf Yomi every day, the same page of Gemara. But the way I understand the Gemara is not the way you understand the Gemara. And everyone's intentions and their aspirations are different when it comes to what they're learning. Now you enter the yeshiva the next day, and again you look at the Gemara and they're learning the same thing. You will see a repeat of what you saw. You know, students yelling at each other, thinking that they're right, or the other one thinks he's right. But it isn't a repeat, because it's new insights, it's new ideas, it's new feelings, and that is the goal: to perform a good deed with renewed vigor, with new excitement, with deeper understanding. You know, when Bnei Israel stood at Yam Suf, the sea was in front of them, and the Mitzrim were pursuing them from behind. The pasuk says, "Vayitzaku Bnei Israel el Hashem." That Bnei Israel shouted to Hakadosh Baruch Hu. And Rashi says there, "Tafsu umanut avotam," that they grabbed hold of the profession of their forefathers. Their forefathers would pray when they were in danger, and now they use that approach, and they also pray to Hakadosh Baruch Hu in the time of need. Now, usually this is actually interpreted as a praise for the Jewish people. Look what they did. They prayed like their avot did, and that's why Hakadosh Baruch Hu came and saved them. But Rav Vadim Mibar Tenura, the one of the main commentators on Mishnah, but here he writes and explains Rashi, saying that what they were doing is they were copying their ancestors, what they did in a difficult situation, but they weren't inspired to pray on their own. It was just something they saw, but they didn't have it inside of them. And that's not how, he writes, that's not how it should be. They should have had that feeling inside of them. Now, although their tefillot weren't perfect, HaKadosh Baruch Hu still answered their tefillot. He split the sea for them, because even imperfect tefillot are special to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The Chachamim say that in order to pray sincerely, a person has to believe that, number one, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu can help. Number two, Hashem wants to help. And three, that my tefillot actually make a difference. If you believe in those 3 points, then indeed your tefillot will be real. One of the students of the Baal Shem Tov, the Toldot Yaakov, he writes that in Parashat Beshalach, a commentary that is very, very cryptic, but has a lot of power and meaning to it. He writes, I heard that there is no Gehinam. This is what he writes in the end of Parashat Beshalach. But rather, what do you mean? When we say that Rasha goes to Gehinam, what does it mean? He says what it means is that he takes the Rasha, HaKadosh Baruch Hu takes the Rasha, and he puts him into Gunheaded. And that becomes his Gehinam. Because he hears people praying with Simcha. He hears people in Gunheaded dancing with while they're learning v'hatmada. And he isn't accustomed to all this, because he lived his life, an evil life, with Averot. And therefore, that experience is extremely painful to him, because he doesn't know where to go. He's kind of in a stuck mode. He's like, uh-oh. And that's the explanation. Actually, the Gemara tells him, Masechet Nedarim, that Kadosh Baruch Hu is going to take the sun from its sheath. The sun is going to come and heal the tzaddikim, and at the same time, it's going to punish the reshaim. The same source that brings joy to the righteous is going to be the one that's going to punish the wicked. And maybe that's the meaning of the Midrash in Parashat Bereshit, when Kadosh Baruch Hu said that he saw a man, he said, Veinet Tov Me'od. The Midrash writes, Veinet Tov Me'od is actually Ze Gehinam. That's what the Midrash says. How can Gehinam be Tov Me'od? How do we make sense of this Midrash? Meaning, Tov Me'od refers to Gehinam because it's also Gunheaded. It's the same place. It's a very good place, but it's Gehinam for the people who aren't accustomed to serving Hakadosh Baruch Hu, and that's a phenomenon that we see in our world as well. Torah and Tefillah can be Gunheaded for the people that are engaged in it and are immersed in it, and it could be Geinam for another person that is not used to it and for whatever reason feels disassociated with the power of the Torah and Tefillah. The world of Gunheaded is something that's internal, something that comes from the inside. You go to an amusement park, says Rabbi Biderman, because you see all the lights, you see all the costumes, you see all the colors, and then you go to the Bet Midrash, and you see the exact opposite. You see black and white, okay, or whatever, and very, very basic, not much going on. So you would say to yourself, the joy and the happiness is over there in the amusement park. It's in Wonderland. It's in Disney World. That's where true happiness is. That's where your dreams come true. That's what they want you to believe. But the answer is you're looking at the external side of things. If you look at the internal, if you look at what's inside, then you see the joy that every Talmid has when he conquers a piece of Gemara or a Sa'if or a Siman in Shulchan Aruch. That is the colors and the lights that we're looking for. That's what brings him the joy. Those are the people who serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu and perform his mitzvot with ultimate sacrifice and with ultimate simcha. But like I said, some people studying Gemara and studying Halacha or going through the Parashat Shavua, it's very difficult for them, and it becomes a geinam. It's like a hell. It's like they're so separated and so distant from it that they want nothing to do with it. And some of you might know individuals like this, and it's true. And that's what the Todot teaches us over here, that the same place of Gan Eden for one person can be a geinam for another person. But if the person in geinam, okay, or the person that is suffering and really struggling wants to understand what he's learning and he cares and he goes, you know what, I'm going to give this shiur a shot, or I'm going to give this the rabbi said I should read the parashat twice a week and targum once. I'm going to give it a shot. Then he'll probably be in the Gan Eden in a very short period of time. He'll experience what it is. There's an interesting perush I read that the primary part of a mitzvah, the mitzvah to study Torah, is that he should enjoy the wisdom that comes with it. The David HaMelech says, Pekudei Adonai yesharim mesamech elev. Torah brings happiness to the heart. That's the beauty of the Torah. So now, it's interesting because the Gemara tells us, mitzvot lav le'anot nitnu. The mitzvot were not given for us to derive pleasure from them. That's not the purpose why Hashem gave us mitzvot. So when it comes to studying Torah, we don't say this rule. This rule doesn't even apply, because the primary aspect of the mitzvah of limud Torah is the pleasure that you derive from your studies. Therefore, the Shulchan Aruch writes, based on the Gemara, that if someone made a neder, someone made a vow, an oath, that so and so cannot derive pleasure from my possessions. Okay? If I say that Reuven cannot derive pleasure from my possessions, and I make a neder on it, okay, Reuven is not allowed to even come and take a book from my library from Torah and read from it, because he's deriving pleasure from the Torah that he's learning. Okay? So now, however, if I make a neder that Reuven cannot derive pleasure from my possessions, Reuven is allowed to come and borrow my tefillin. He can borrow my tefillin and wear my tefillin, because mitzvot lav le'anot nitnu. The mitzvot were not given to derive pleasure. So he can put on my tefillin, he's fulfilling a mitzvah, but he's not deriving pleasure from the mitzvah. He's getting reward, but he's not deriving a physical pleasure. But Torah, you're actually getting a physical pleasure. So studying Torah is different, because the whole essence of the mitzvah is to derive hana'ah from, and because you're enjoying the wisdom of Hashem. What should a person do when he doesn't enjoy studying Torah? What should he do if studying Torah is like a geinam to him? What should a person do when he's trying to pray and he's trying to have concentration in the tefillah? The words are not just they're not coming to him. He doesn't enjoy praying. It's like a burden. He's like constantly looking at his clock. He can't wait to get out. They rush through tefillah for whatever reason, and because it's something that is very difficult. What do you do to that person? Or what do you do that? What does a person do when he feels a mitzvot or a burden? Again, this can apply in so many parts and aspects of our religion. What does the person do? And the answer is, if you believe deep down inside that there's a joy, that there's an innate and internal simcha in the mitzvah, in the tefillah, in the Torah that you learn, you will seek it and you will find it. The Or HaChaim says in in his Perush. He says, "Ve'en tov ela Torah." And I quote. He says, "There is no good other than Torah. Shimayu bnei adam margishin bimtikot va'arevot tova Torah." If the people only knew and experienced the sweetness and pleasure of Torah, hayu mishtage'in umitla'atim achareh. They would chase after it with a passion. The entire world filled with gold and silver would be not like nothing to them, because the Torah encompasses all the good. So therefore, we have a sweetness. There's a joy when a person studies. And for those who study, they're fortunate to experience it. And for those that don't study it, or were not fortunate to experience that joy, if they just tasted it once, you'll see how their life would change. It would change. The halakha writes that before drinking a beverage, any beverage, you have to say shakol niyabikara. That's the bracha that you say. But when it comes to water, halakha is different. When it comes to water, you only say beracha if you're thirsty for water. Okay? If you have to pop a pill and you need water to pop the pill, and you're not thirsty, you just need to put it down. You don't say beracha on that water. And the reason is because the water is very sweet, but it's sweet only if you're thirsty. Only if you need to quench your thirst. I need water. Adai, of course you say it. Okay? Everything else has another taste to it that you will enjoy more than the average water, which is a essence for life. And just popping a pill is different. Torah is compared to water. And therefore, similarly applied. The pleasure of Torah study is experienced when a person thirsts for it. Okay? But if you're only just dabbing at it because someone told you to do it, then you're not going to appreciate it. You're not going to enjoy the way it was meant to be.
Is the singing also conducive to that enjoyment?
Is the what?
The singing.
The singing? Singing of the Torah or singing of...
Normally, the tefillot.
Yes, definitely. 100%. 100%. 100%. The fact that we chant the tefillot and the fact that we go through them slowly, and that's why it's called Pesukei de Zimra. Right? Zimra has a lot of connotations. Some say it's cutting down the evil forces. That's what it is. A myth. With a dagesh, but zemira is song. It's meant to be sang. We do a good job. We Sfaradim singing the Pesukei de Zimra and the other parts. Halel Zimra, of course. Person accepts the yoke of the Torah and everything that comes with it. He will try his best. You will see how it will turn into a Gunheaded for them. The Rambam writes in Hilchot Yesodei Torah that a person should strive to fill maleh kreso, to fill his stomach with shasu poskim, with the Mishnah, Shisha Sidrei Mishnah, and poskim, and the poskim of halakha. So the Katzker Rebbe famously asked, "What's the lashon of the Rambam over here? What do you mean fill your stomach? Should we fill your mind?" That's what the Rambam sure said. Fill your mind with Gemara and Mishnah and poskim. So he says, beautiful. He says, if you think about when you eat a meal, a few hours you eat a meal, after you eat a meal, you want to eat again. That's the way our body is. That's the appetite we need to have for Torah. We should never be satisfied. It needs to be like maleh kreso. My stomach is filled now, but soon my stomach is going to be empty and I want to be more. That's why we say in Birkot HaShachar, "Targilenu betoratecha." Targilenu betoratecha means accustom us in your Torah. So another question, similar. We don't want to perform Avodat Hashem by rote. How many times have you heard me or other people talk about that? It's got to be refreshing. It's not shouldn't be just press a button and you just do the same thing every day. You got to have new feeling. So where's min targilenu betoratecha? That seems the opposite of what we should be aiming for. I don't want to just accustom myself to the learning of the Torah. So it says Imre, he says that when it comes to food, a person is accustomed himself to eating. He eats 3 meals a day, with several snacks in between, but each time that he eats, there's a new eagerness. There's a desire. He never gets tired of eating. You know anybody that gets tired of eating? Oh, right? Some of you might have not even been hungry right now, but when the chicken wings came onto the table, all of a sudden, there's that eagerness to go and try the chicken wings. So same thing when a person learns Torah, he has to have that cheshek that will help him understand the Torah. There's an amazing story about the Bet Levi who was studying a certain sugya in Mekach Umemkar, in business, buying and selling, related to money matters. He was studying a certain Perush, a Rishon, and there were many, many commentaries that were challenging what this particular rabbi was saying in his book. And the Bet Levi was trying his best to understand what exactly the rabbi meant by this. And he spent 3 days and 3 nights trying to figure this out. And he finally succeeded in answering each one of the critics' questions on this one Rishon. The next day, he's walking by a court, and he hears a person, a regular guy, say the exact same idea that this Rishon said in his book. Now, this simple person didn't know what was written in the book. He was just an average Jew, okay? And so he heard, oh my God, this is exactly what I was learning. So he wanted to listen to the court case. Believe it or not, the judge was asked the same critical questions that all the rabbis asked on that Rishon. The judge was asking on that guy that made this claim. And unbelievably, this simple Jew managed to answer every one of the questions the same way that the Bet Levi learned the last 3 days and 3 nights. He couldn't understand. He said, I broke my head 3 days, 3 nights. He's a huge Talmid Chacham. This guy, nobody, never did anything. He managed to put it in his head and answer the same questions. So initially he felt bad. He said, no, I can't look at all the sweat I had to go through it. This guy just got it. And then he realized, because if it wasn't for the fact that you had a reason to come up with the answer, for the simple Jew is because he needed to win the case, or he needed to defend himself, or he needed to make the money, or whatever it was, then you wouldn't come up with it. You have to have a cheshek. You have to have a desire. For the Bet Levi, it was 3 days and 3 nights because he wanted to defend this Rishon, this commentary, and he needed to answer all of those questions of the other people. That was his cheshek. For this guy, it was just the money. Le'olam lo eshkach pikudecha ki bam hayitani. Meaning, I will never forget the Torah because the Torah is my life. And if it's something that you care about, you're never gonna forget it. If something that you don't care about, then you will probably forget it. So if you ever ask yourself and you wonder, why is it that I learn things and I can't remember? Or I remember, and because you didn't care enough to learn it. It wasn't really that much of a part of you. You didn't dwell on it. You didn't take the notes that you need to take. You didn't, focus your mind on it. If you made it part of your life, you live by it, certainly you will remember. The Gemara that I quoted on Shavuot and a couple of times, even last week, tells in Masechet Shabbat that HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted to give the Torah to the Jewish people, but the angels in heaven, they protested. And why should you give this whole hidden treasure to any people that are flesh and blood? Why not keep it over here? So I quote the Gemara. Gemara tells us that Hashem looked at Moshe and says, you need to respond to the Malachim. And Moshe went ahead defending the reasons why that the Jewish people should receive the Torah. And he went through each one of how the 10 commandments did not apply to the angels. So Moshe Rabbeinu asked him, it says lo tachmod, don't be jealous of others. How does this apply to you? You don't have any feelings. You don't have the concept of jealousy. Doesn't even exist by you, the angels. So it's also written lo tin'af, meaning you don't have the desire to commit adultery. Malachim don't have a yetzer hara. So Moshe proved that the mitzvot are meant for the Jewish people, for human beings, and not for malachim. It's interesting that when people perceive their own shortcomings and what they lack, their bad midot, their ta'avot, their temptations, they think that the Torah is not for them. Why should I be a person that houses the Torah inside of me if I have a yetzer hara and I have temptations and I have lust for physical things? How could the Torah be speaking to me? But when you think about it, the Torah was given specifically to people that have yetzer hara. If HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted to give it to someone that didn't have the yetzer hara, he would give it to the angels. Right? That's what he would have done. But Hashem gave us the Torah because we have a yetzer hara. Our faults is what makes us the perfect candidates to actually perform the mitzvot and learn the Torah. You would expect that on Har Sinai, HaKadosh Baruch Hu would teach us all the deep Kabbalah. Yeah? You would think this is the moment where Am Yisrael experiences God. You would think the biggest, the deepest shiurim, bring all the mekubalim. And what does he tell us? Don't kill. Don't steal. Don't commit adultery. Logical things. But these are all things that have to do with our tendencies and desires. Whoever has these tendencies knows that the Torah is talking to them. That's the one thing he wanted us to know. Another proof. What do we know that is an allusion to yetzer hara? Hametz. Right? We talk about this in Pesach time. That the matzah, the chametz is the yetzer hara. That's why we something that's haughty and arrogant, and we need to bring it down. Matzah. You've heard all that many, many times, right? What is the korban we bring on Shavuot, the holiday of Matan Torah? Chametz. We bring chametz. Shtei alechem. It's chametz because the Yetzer Hara is what gives us our right to Torah. Our temptations and our struggles makes our service special to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And that's why when the Jewish people were standing b'tachtit hahar, the mountain, Hashem raised up the mountains over the head and forced them to accept the Torah. Tosfot asked the famous question. They already said Na'aseh v'nishma. So therefore, why is it necessary to force them? That's the question of Tosfot. I gave one answer here Shavuot night. But he brings down another answer. He says, because by Matan Torah, the Jewish people reached such an amazing level that Paskal Zu HaMatan, their impurity ceased to exist. In other words, they didn't have a Yetzer Hara anymore. So this creates a problem. Because like we said, ideally the Torah needs to be given to human beings who have tendencies and temptations and lusts and Yetzer Hara. The Gemara Masechet Sukkah says that the mountain represents the Yetzer Hara. In the end of the days, the tzaddikim are going to look at the Yetzer Hara and to them it's going to appear like a mountain. Like, wow, look at what I climbed. Look at what I defeated. Look at what I conquered. So Hashem placed the mountains over the heads of Bnei Yisrael, means that Hashem brought the Yetzer Hara back into their lives, because at Matan Torah everyone was cleansed from the Yetzer Hara, but that wasn't the purpose of Matan Torah. So here's the mountain back, and therefore you should have the Yetzer Hara so you can overcome the Yetzer Hara and overcome the obstacles to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Connected to this idea, of course, is we can learn from the Parashat Nazir. Nazir, of course, is the person, the Nazirite, who takes upon himself not to drink any wine for at least 30 days, and as well not come into contact with the dead, become tameh. One of the halachot is that he cannot become tameh. If he becomes tameh, says the parasha, he must start again his count. He has to start again. The first days fall off; they don't count because he became tameh. So the Baalei Musar say from here that when we learn that if a person fails in his resolutions that he wants to do in life, he shouldn't mope and give up. He fell, he restarts his count. He starts over from the beginning and tries again. Many people, they stumble. They reach high levels and they stumble. So Shlomo Melech says very famously, Sheva yipol tzaddik. A tzaddik will fall 7 times. There's a cycle of improvement and regression. We tend to fall, but we come right back up. And that's what the laws of Nazir teach us, because there is a Yetzer Hara. It's going to cause us to sin, cause us to fall and stumble. But if the first attempt failed, you try again until you succeed. That's why Shlomo Melech said, Sheva yipol tzaddik vekam, u'bereshayim yikashlu bera'ab. A tzaddik falls 7 times and rises, but the tzaddik, the rasha, stumbles in bad. Both the tzaddik and the rasha fall. They're both falling. They're both tripping. But it's the tzaddik doesn't remain in his fallen state. Vekam, he gets back up, even 7 times. What's the meaning of 7 times? Why did Shlomo Melech say 7 times? Again, the Gemara, that same Gemara Masechet Sukkah that talks about the Yetzer Hara. It says the Yetzer Hara has 7 names. 7 names. HaKadosh Baruch Hu calls the Yetzer Hara Ra. Moshe called it Arel. David HaMelech called it Tameh. Shlomo HaMelech called it Soneh. Yeshayahu called it Michshol. Yechezkel called it Eben. And Yoel called it Tzefoni. And so the Yetzer Hara's 7 names correspond to the 7 tactics that the Yetzer Hara uses to lead people to sin. And these 7 approaches are alluded to in the Pasuk, Sheva Yipol Tzadik Vekam. What is the 7th tactic? Sefoni, that's the 7th name of Yetzer Hara, which literally means Safun. Safun in our Seder means hidden. That's why the Afikoman is hidden. We're called Safun. So when the Yetzer Hara sneaks up on people and ambushes them and causes them to sin without them realizing, the Yetzer Hara often does this to tell the person, don't worry, this Averah, it's really a mitzvah, it's a good thing to do. You can talk Lashon Hara about the guy, it's okay, he deserves it. Right? That's why they try convincing you to do something like that. He doesn't allow himself to remain in a fallen state. It's where he comes. And therefore, the Pasuk tells us that the Tzaddik falls for the 7 hoaxes of the Yetzer Hara, but after that, Vekam. The Tzaddik still gets up. He gets up again, he conquers the Yetzer Hara. He doesn't allow himself to remain there. By contrast, with the Reshaim, Shlomo Melech says, Reshaim yichashlu bera'ah. They stumble with number 1. Bera'ah. We said Ra was the name that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave the Yetzer Hara. The first level of the Yetzer Hara The Rasha falls at the first level and never recovers, and he's done. He gives up, and he doesn't try again. And that's how we attain growth. Growth is through falling back, picking oneself. The Yerida, the tzorach aliyah. We go down in order to pick ourselves back up. A person doesn't understand the Torah until he makes a mistake first. That's part of life. He has a wrong understanding. That's okay. You go ask a rabbi. You made a mistake once. You go. You'll get it. You'll get it the next time. Same thing when it comes to avodat Hashem. Once a certain bahur went to Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, who was the Rosh Yeshiva of Kol Torah, and he was once a very, very good student, and things were happening in his life where he was dropping a little bit in his avodat Hashem and his learning. So he went to go speak to the Rosh Yeshiva to give him some chizuk, and Rav Shlomo Zalman gave him a mashal. He said someone brought material to a tailor, and he asked him, "Please make me a suit." And the tailor takes the material, or this expensive material, and starts taking those big scissors and starts cutting into the material. And the man watched in horror. He goes, "What are you doing? Why are you cutting that material in so many places? You know how much money I paid for that material? It's expensive material. That's a wool from Italy, and now you're cutting it all up." And he discovered that each cut serves a different purpose. One of them is the collar, one of them is the sleeve, one of them is the lining, right? That's what it is. So that's what Shlomo Zalman told the student. Could the tailor have made the suit without cutting it into the pieces? Of course not. Cutting the materials, the process in order to make the suit. The only way that a person can become someone great, an Adam Gadol, is if he goes through hard times. There's moments where you're going to feel that you're drifting and you're being separated from your goal. But if you keep trying, all of these descents, the tzorech aliyah, are for the moment, are the purpose to bring up. And that's really what Shlomo HaMelech says, Sheva Yipot Tzadik V'Kam. 7 descents are part of the getting up process. From the depths, you can rise up to the heaven, to mamash, very, very high levels. I actually titled this shiur the difficulties of this generation, but the hidden benefit that's involved in it. And I think we can really tie up a lot of what we have said, to what is happening right now. Levi had 3 sons. Gershon, Kehat, and Merari. And when you pay attention close to the Pesukim in this week's Parashat and last week's Parashat, you will find differences in the wordings of each one. Actually, the word Naso et Rosh starts from last week's Parashat. Well, maybe you figure it out. At the end of Parashat Bamidbar, you see Naso et Rosh b'nei Kehat. Okay? That was the end of Parashat Bamidbar. It's the word Naso is used by Kehat, and it's used by Gershon in the beginning of this week's Parashat. But it's not used when it comes to Merari. The word Naso is not used. When mentioning Kehat, Naso et Rosh b'nei Kehat mitoch b'nei Levi, Gershon, which is the first pasuk, Naso et Rosh b'nei Gershon, gam hem, lebet avotam mishpechotam. But Merari it's not said. Why? Why did Hashem command that Moshe raise the heads, Naso, raise the heads of Gershon and Kehat, but not Merari? So Khatam Sofer answers this question with really, really incredible answer. And he says, Gershon, Kehat, and Merari correspond and represent 3 situations of Klal Yisrael, the Jewish experience. Kehat means to gather, gathering. That refers to when the Jewish people are gathered in Eretz Yisrael in the time of the Beit HaMikdash. Gershon means banished. The Garesh is to divorce. Gerushin is divorce. To banish, to exile. That represents the generations of Galut. The Torah tells Moshe Rabbeinu, Naso, to elevate them, lemishpechotam, lebet avotam, to their ancestors, to their forefathers' levels. The Moshe should elevate the Jewish nation who live at the time of the Beit HaMikdash and at the time of the Galut to the levels of the Avot HaKedoshim, lebet avotam, as if they were Abraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov. Merari alludes to the bitter generations, marot, to the bitter generations, in addition to the Galut, in addition to the exile, the fact that the Jews are bitter. The Jews themselves are suffering. Who are Merari's children? Machli umusi. Machli umusi. Machli is disease, mahala, and musi is the concept of moving from place to place. Lo yamu sefer picha. Don't move. Don't transfer. And these are examples of different galuyot that the Jewish nation has to endure during these times. suffering, illness, and exile. When the galut is so difficult and so bitter, says the Khatam Sofer, the Jewish people are already on the highest level. They're already on the top level. The Chachamim tell us in Gemara Maseh Batra that the Dor Shel Shmad, the generation that the Goyim are trying to destroy them, no creature can stand in their place. So the Torah doesn't use the word Naso by Merari, that Moshe should raise them and elevate them to the heights of the Avot. You know why? Because they're already on the highest level. They're already there. Their forefathers are second to them. You don't need to go to Abraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov because they're already higher than Abraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov. You know why? Because despite their hardships, despite the difficulties they go through, they continue on to hold on to their faith. They're already on the highest level. They don't need to be raised. You know, Moshe Rabbeinu, what does it say about Moshe Rabbeinu? And Moshe Rabbeinu was the most humble of all men. How did Moshe Rabbeinu achieve this level of humility? Did he not receive the Torah? He spoke to Hashem, panim el panim. There was no Nabi like Moshe Rabbeinu. He was the leader of Klal Yisrael. So how did he reach that level of humility? It's a big question, a lot of different answers. But Chachamim tell us that Moshe Rabbeinu saw Sefer Toldot Adam. He saw the book that Adam HaRishon composed, and that lists all the people that were going to be born and all the things that were going to happen to them. And in that book, Moshe Rabbeinu saw the final generation of all the hardships that they were going to go through in Ruchniut and Gashmiut, the generation that we're living in now. And he said that at the same time, the Jews were still going to be Moser Nefesh. They were going to still keep the mitzvot and serve Hashem despite all the hardships and the struggles. When Moshe Rabbeinu saw this, that humbled him. That humbled him. And that's how he attained his humility. We are living in very, very difficult times. And yet, in a way, we are living in the nation's most glorious generation. I hinted to this idea in my last week's derasha. When Mashiach comes, we're going to see how precious really who we are and our generation is. But we live in hard times. And sometimes we ask ourselves, I don't know how I can do this. The Gemara tells us that Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah's neighbor sent her cow outdoors on Shabbat when there wasn't an eruv. And it carried a strap between its horns, meaning it was carrying something. And she violated Shabbat because the Torah says that you have on Shabbat, you have to have your animals rest. It's in the Ten Commandments. You have to have your animals rest. Not in the Ten Commandments, but it's later on. You have to have your animals rest. So Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah should have told the neighbor, gotta leave your animal inside. There's no eruv. We can't have it carrying items for you. But he didn't. And he wasn't mocheh. He didn't protest the lady. So he was responsible for the lady's sin. To atone for the Averah, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah fasted so much his teeth turned black for this one sin. So the students of the Arizal asked the Arizal, what's going to be with us? You know, we have so many more Averot than Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah was the eventual Nasi of the generation. He took over. We have severe transgressions. This he just didn't protest. He wasn't even the one that was Mechalel Shabbat. He just didn't protest the lady and tried to stop her. So how are we ever going to achieve atonement? Hence, I asked last week, we say to yourself, how can we be like the previous generation? How is it possible to reach their levels? And who are we living in today's world? So it says the Arizal, and this was in the Arizal's time, in our generation, because the galut is so dark, you shout out to Hashem once, one time, or one true sigh and moan from your heart, it's equivalent to many fasts. All the fasts that Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah did, one shriek, one tefillah to Hashem. And from that generation of the Arizal to today, how many more tzarot do we have? How much more galuyot do we have? We have more problems. We have more tests. So certainly, when a Jew calls out to Hashem and reaches out to God from the depths of his heart, how many ta'aniyot does that serve? How much illness do we have now? How much poverty do we have now, unfortunately? How much anti-Semitism do we have to deal with on a daily basis? How much of the media is affecting our thoughts and our ideologies, and we're just being injected with craziness every single day. I don't have to tell some people here who send me private messages all the time about this, right? But this is what's happening all the time. All the time. He's keeping on his side. He's keeping on his side. And overwhelming tests. the internet and all the evil that comes with the internet. There's great stuff on the internet too, but there's a lot of tum'ah that is there. So therefore, the people that serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu wholeheartedly and manage to overcome those challenges, that generation is extremely precious. And that's the generations that we are. The Gemara tells us, if the first generations were like angels, then we are like people, and the earlier generations were like people, and we are like donkeys. And this is the time of the Gemara. So how are we today? Worse and worse and worse than donkeys. But that's okay. That's okay, because look what we have to go through versus what they have to go through. You know, they were living in times, like I said, you know, they secluded, they didn't have what we have today. It isn't that we are on a higher level than them on knowledge and in all the areas. We stand on a much lower level in Tzadikim. We are not the Baba Sali, we're not the Rabbi Shimon, we're not the Rabbi Meir, and we're not the Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah or Hillel Azaken. Definitely, we can tell that. But if we can stand loyal to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, if we can stand firm in our faith to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, then that makes at least the bitterness of our galut much more feasible to overcome and makes us more precious in the eyes of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And we have to remember that. We have to think of that as we go through our lives. Right? A little allusion to this is Bayom HaShemini Nasi Divnei Menashe Gamliel ben Pedatzur. This week's parasha. The 8th day, Menashe, who is this Nasi? Gamliel ben Pedatzur. Menashe means forgotten. Kinashani Elokim. That's why Yosef named his son Menashe, because he thought that he was forgotten. So when you think that HaKadosh Baruch Hu forgets about you, you're in galut, you're steeped into the darkness of exile, what is the solution? Gamliel. Gamliel. I also have Hashem. I'm also connected to Hashem. Ben Pedatzur. Pedatzur. When you have this belief, it's like you redeemed Hashem from the galut. And that's why a lot of people make a mistake when they think that Hashem only wants them to serve them when their awareness of Hashem is at their peak, when at their top. That's when Hashem wants me the most. No. When you're deep in the galut and you're steeped in the darkness, HaKadosh Baruch Hu desires one shriek, and you can change your world, you can change your community's world, you can change your generation. And in Hashem's eyes, you are the best of the best. Wishing everyone a wonderful night.